Okay. Well, I'll share with you one interesting event that occurred. It's pretty incredible. You have I'm not going to go into too much detail. I want people to know who it is. The person is kind of
Yeah.
very cagey about this, but you have a helicopter going out of a Caribbean island on a regular basis because the Navy likes to test fire some of its cruise missile technology and whatnot. And what will happen is that after the cruise missile runs out of fuel, it kind of splashes into the ocean. It will sink, and then at a certain time, it kind of rises up, and we go and fetch it, and we analyze it for telemetry and things like that. Long story short, helicopter crew goes out to recover one of these things. As they are recovering it the first time, the missile, they're pulling up and something what was described round and circular about the size of a small island, black dark color, starts rising to the surface. It doesn't break the water, but it starts rising to the surface. They thought, wow, that's really, really peculiar. Well, the next month goes around and they go out to retrieve this another missile that was test fired. And this time we've got a frogman hanging down from the rope, about to latch on to the missile, and this thing starts coming out of the water again. And if you know about the Puerto Rican trench out there, you're talking about water that's 22,000 feet deep. It's the second deepest part of the ocean. The thing starts rising up, and as the thing is starting to come to the surface, the frogman is literally trying to climb the rope. They're doing an emergency ascent. Everybody is absolutely panic at the disco, freaking out. What the hell is that? What's going on? And as they start to pull up, it sucks the missile underwater and then disappears, never to be seen again. I mean, there's incidents like that just kind of make the hair stand up on the back of your neck and go, what?
When was that?
It was a little while ago. I don't want to go into too much detail because, like I said, the person wants their privacy.
Yeah.
I know the individual personally. I've talked to him. He does not want any type of publicity. He's actually, I think, kind of averse to it. He doesn't want to be. He's kind of seen what happened to me and others. So he's like, Lou, I don't want any part of that.
Last October, in the quiet Mississippi town of Pascagoula, two local men confronted authorities with a rather bizarre story. Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker told of a strange craft landing near their fishing site and of being taken aboard by three unearthly creatures. The two men were questioned under hypnosis and lie detectors, but their story remained intact. One of the men suffered a nervous breakdown and is still under treatment. Among the skeptics were Ralph and Judy Blum, already at work on a UFO book. With W5 last week, Ralph and Judy returned to Pascagoula.
Judy and I stumbled into this book. It came to us to be written. Suddenly we were in a wave of waves. UFOs were being seen across the country again. We were in what they call a flap. And people began experiencing things that they couldn't explain. Something was happening in our skies in the midst of Watergate, Agnew, the energy crisis, the Middle East. Something was happening and people couldn't understand what it was. We spoke about UFOs, but nobody really knew. And then it hit right here where we are. It hit Pascagoula. Charlie Hickson entered the news and we had a book to write.
Something happened October of '73 that would go down in history. The spaceship came with many blue lights, set down near them in the night. Three little men came out and took him inside. They looked him over with one big eye. They say what they saw was the real thing, though. They were the ones that saw the Pascagoula UFO.
We were sitting on the other side of the pier with our feet, over toward the river, fishing in the river. And the fish still wasn't biting, so I told Calvin, I said, well, we might as well go home. But I guess that was when I heard it. It was some kind of zipping sound. And when I turned around, in this area out here, about 40 or 50 feet out there, it was some kind of craft, it looked like it's going to come right onto the ground. But it came on down and hovered about about 1.5 foot or 2 feet off of the ground. We didn't know what to do, you know. The river behind us and that out there not knowing what it was. So, and then before we had time to really do anything, it seemed like an opening appeared. Toward the end, it was, you know, toward us. And the blue light, it had blue flashing lights as it was, you know, approaching the ground, but then they went out. And when the opening appeared, some source of light came from the inside. It was just almost blinding.
Sheriff Diamond, can you tell me just what happened that night?
No, sir, I can't. All I can tell you is there was 2 men came into the sheriff's department approximately 8:30 and 9 o'clock. They were all excited, upset, wanting to climb the walls, hysterical, crying. That's actually all I know is what happened. I mean, as far as me seeing what happened, I don't know.
Of course, we could see them in the opening coming from, you know, when it started out to craft. But
Did you think it was people coming out at first?
Well, they had. I kind of thought it was people at first, you know, off like that. But of course, when they appeared there in front of me, it was the most shock I've ever had in my life.
What did you see?
Well, they were shorter than me. I'd say about 5'2" or 3", and they didn't have a neck. Their head, it seemed to come directly to their shoulders. And they had something, it came out to a point about where a nose would be, and on each side, the ears. And I believe that they looked like they were a little longer on the ears than the nose.
But still pointed the ears.
They were still pointing, yes.
But since I was down there, and since I was a physician, and several other scientists and investigators were asked to consult and look into the situation, I was asked would I mind if I would be present, and I said I wouldn't mind at all. And while it is still very difficult for us to believe that a spaceship landed and that robot-type creatures came out and actually took these 2 people into the spaceship, these men, in my opinion, believe that they saw this and that they were being honest in reporting what they have reported.
But it seemed to me when they came out that doorway, or that opening or whatever it was, then just almost instantly they were right there on us. And their arms, they had arms, and I saw the arms moving here and in the shoulders, but they had webbed. I mean, their fingers were webbed, and then they had something like a thumb, and they were like this.
Mm-hmm. We questioned them at length, and then we left the room and recorded all the conversation they had, recorded between the 2 of them. And one of them kept wanting to pray. And he said, after all I went through on this earth, he said, why should I have to see something like this?
Calvin Parker, I was questioning him, and at one time he wanted to climb the wall. That's how nervous and how shook up he was.
They had me one on this arm like this, and on the other one, you know, they had my other arm like that. And I just seemed to lift up to the same height they were off the ground, and we just moved into the craft.
Now inside, how did they lay you out? Do you remember how it happened?
Yes. I didn't see any tables or chairs or anything in there. I'm not saying it wasn't in there because the light was almost blinding, but I didn't see any. And when they carried me inside, they seemed to just lean me back, you know. And this eye, well, I keep referring to it as an eye, and it moved up to in front of me about this close. And it started right at my eyes, looking me right in the eye. And it hesitated there for a few seconds, and it just started moving over my entire body. When they brought me from the craft along this area here, and they didn't drop me, you know, they just released me back to the ground. And I fell. I don't know why my legs were weak. I don't know why it was the fright or what it was, but I fell onto the ground. And that's when I seen Calvin. He's standing right over here in this area, and he was standing facing the river with his arms outstretched like that, just like he was staring at something.
Can you tell me about the lie detector test?
Well, so that was run by Pilkington. Was it Pilkington?
Pennington.
Pennington.
That they run this type of test about 6 times a day. And when they were asked to come over here to talk to these people, they had in their mind that it was just a big joke. And if I understand it correctly, they ran one test on Mr. Hickson. The machine showed that he was telling the truth, then they run another one, and then the examiner, he began to wonder himself. So he ran the third test, and he believed just what Mr. Hickson had told him.
Mr. Booth, tell me what happened that night in October.
Well, I got up and had turned off the TV and come to the front door, which you can see right behind me. Just as usual, checking to see if it was locked. So I looked out the window at the top, and naturally I saw this object above the street light out there. So naturally it caught my eye where the lights was on it. Couldn't hear any racket or anything. So I opened the door after a few seconds to step out to see if I could really tell what it was. It just took off.
Can you describe it?
Well, it was round, had lights all the way around it, turning in a counter-clockwise motion. It had a dome on top with a bright light shining out through the top of it. To tell the actual figure of it or anything, you couldn't tell. You could just see the lights and the one on top.
When it happened to Charlie, the creatures, whatever they were, didn't communicate with him. Now, it's enough to say you saw a UFO to give you trouble these days in some towns. To be taken aboard is just a suspect idea. But somehow, if the creatures don't give you a message, you're just a touch less incredible. And Charlie says that what he said and what we wrote about in the book, it was like they had a job to do, and they came and they did it.
I think there has to be a reason why that Calvin and me was picked.
Maybe because you could take it?
Well, it might be. I don't know. I think that they know more of what's going on down here on this earth than we think. And I don't know, they might have been, you might say, looking for somebody that could, you might say, hold up under the strain and convince people that there is another world and there's some kind of life on that world up there.
They were the ones that saw the Pascagoula UFO.
I want you to describe what you saw when you arrived in this field where this supposed downed aircraft was.
Well, first of all, we were in a field hunting for this downed aircraft, and the first rescue team already found it and radioed into the fire hall, gave the coordinates, and it was down in front of us, and we hightailed it out of our search area, went down into there, and we got there expecting a smashed up airplane. Wings, fuselage, etc. No such character. Came down through the woods, and here's this humongous piece of metal laying there. I mean, this thing I've described time and time again as a very large acorn-shaped object. The front of it, or I presume was the front of it, was pushed down into the dirt where the way it came in and landed after it took out the top of the trees and brush and everything coming in. Came back in an oblong shape. Around the bottom was what I call a bumper, and then the bottom was perfectly flat. No signs of propulsion or anything. There was no doors, no windows. There was no ways of getting in this thing, at least none that I seen. There was no seams on it, no rivets, nothing. The only thing I seen was this bumper around it, and it had these real strange markings on it, which I've often referred to as similar to the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. So, as a volunteer fireman, we did what we were supposed to do. Find the crash site, do a preliminary investigation for survivors or treat anybody with it, which we didn't because there was none that we could see. There was no way of getting in this object. The first team had already radioed in its position. We're there 10, 15 minutes all talking around, doing a preliminary search, wondering what we discovered. Two gentlemen come down through the woods, trench coats on, ramrod stiff, crew cut. All right, this is a restricted area. You're now ordered to get out of here. Now, wait a minute, I'm a civilian. You ain't going to order me nothing. But as a fireman, I'm being relieved from what I'm doing. So I got out of there. We're going out through the woods. We didn't go no more than 15, 20 feet. And I know from me to you, here come the military. Full uniforms, equipment, marching right down through the woods with flashlights. This is December. It's late in the evening, it's cold, it's wet.
How far away were you from a military base?
Well, the closest base that I knew of was Pittsburgh, which was approximately 45 miles to the west.
So within 15 minutes of your arrival at the site, the military was there?
You got it.
Okay, all right. Now, what did they say to you after this happened? I mean, I know there were several members of the report I saw on Unsolved Mysteries. Several members of the community were there. People, right? Other people, part of the community, were there and present, and were all told to leave.
There was no press or media at the immediate crash site.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't know up on top of the hill, because I come in through the side, the military had taken over a farmhouse. I mean, from what I understand, military brass. They took over up there, did all their orders and whatever they were doing from up there, and that's where I presume that the military who came down through the woods came from. Because when we went out, we had to walk back to the fire hall, which was approximately the way we had to go, I'd say a good mile. But by the time we got back to the fire hall, it was wall-to-wall military. I mean, there was trucks and jeeps and cars. There was guards on the door.
Did anybody say to you, I don't want you talking about this, don't say a word about this, or were you, with that term, debriefed?
What they did. I mean, these people virtually told us just to shut up, get to your vehicles, and be quiet.
And you did what you were told?
One of the guys even asked the guards at the door, look, I got to go to the bathroom. Now, these guys are standing there with weapons. Whether they were loaded or not, I don't know. None of us was brave enough to try to find out. He said, I got to go to the bathroom. They said, see those weeds over there? Use them. Well, by that time, we just headed for the trucks. I have a daughter and a son that both went into the military within the last 2 or 3 years. One went in the Marine Corps, one went in the U.S. Air Force. My daughter come to me from the United States Marine Corps, and she said, Dad, your name come up on a computer as my father. I had to sign a statement saying I would never ask or request for any information from Kecksburg. My son had to sign 2 statements.
Oh, about you? About yourself?
Pardon?
Any information about yourself? You had to, your daughter had to sign a paper that says she would not ask for any information about you?
Not about me, but about Kecksburg. Because my name come up as her father.
Okay, but you know what?
Then, no, wait a minute, Montel.
Okay.
Then my son in the U.S. Air Force had to sign 2 papers. One.
But Jim, wait, let's jump to the chase. Because part of the chase here is the fact that I'm telling you, I had some of the highest clearances this country has to offer. I've been through files on top of files on top of files. I still ain't seen nothing yet.
But did you have a need to know?
But
you didn't have a need to know.
Yeah, but that's also
now,
not true.
my son goes in the Air Force and they tell him he can't even request to go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for duty because I seen something and that's where my UFO is sitting today.
Maybe his MOS was something that they didn't have a qualification for at Wright-Patterson.
His MOS has nothing to do with it.
Okay, all right, hold on a minute.
The government is covering this up. They don't want no one to know. They don't want no one to get access to anything because they're afraid people will find out the truth. The technology, you was in the service. You really believe the technology we got today, we came from up here?
Wait.
Maybe some of it did.
December 1978, an Italian private security guard named Piero Fortunato Zanfretta had a series of bizarre experiences with tall green giants that rank among the most fantastic stories of all UFO contactees. Important elements of Zanfretta's account were confirmed by physical evidence and corroborating witnesses, and the unfolding drama was thoroughly documented in Italian media. Zanfretta's dramatic story exemplifies many common features of UFO contact narratives, and serves as a vivid testament to their wholly alien nature. Fortunato Zanfretta was 26 and working as a security guard at a private security company, Valbizano, at the time of his first experience. On the night of December 6, 1978, he was making his usual rounds in the village of Marzano. Around 11:30 p.m., Zanfretta pulled up to a private villa when his car suddenly stopped and lost all electrical function. He then noticed that the gate and villa door were wide open, and that there were 4 moving lights on the lawn. He drew his weapon and ran just inside the open door to the villa. Expecting to ambush a group of thieves, he received an unexpected push from behind. Zanfretta spun around to see a monstrous being with wrinkly green skin, triangular yellow eyes, and 3 horns on each side of its head. Its mouth was covered in a metal strip, flesh piled up around its neck like gills. Its forehead was covered in red veins, and its fingers ended in long nails with rounded tips. Zanfretta claimed that it stood no less than 3 meters tall. Terrified, the guard sprinted across the lawn, then felt an intense light at his back and turned around to see a large, flat triangular craft ascending from behind the villa. The object was covered in blindingly bright multicolored lights and made a hissing noise as it rose. He later estimated it to be 30 meters wide. 2 guards were dispatched to the scene and found Zamfreda face down on the lawn. Though it was cold out, his clothes were warm and dry. Zamfreda was hysterical when he awoke and had to be forcibly disarmed. In the spot where he'd been lying, there was a distinct semicircular impression, 3 meters in diameter, 15 centimeters thick, and pressed 3 centimeters deep. The story reached the papers on December 8th. Most dismissed it as a hoax, but Rino Di Stefano, a journalist at the Corriere Mercantile, a Genoese paper, took a personal interest and visited the site that afternoon. Di Stefano confirmed the presence of the semicircular indentation, and the Carabinieri, the Italian military police, found at least 52 witnesses to lights over Marzano that night. Another 2-meter semicircular imprint appeared where one of these lights was seen. The next day, Di Stefano spoke with Zamfreda and interviewed all the other personnel involved. He then arranged to have Dr. Mauro Moretti, a well-esteemed hypnosis specialist, perform regressive hypnosis on Zamfreda. In the session, Zamfreda narrated details of the encounter that he could not consciously recall. The being commanded Zamfreda to come with him and placed a helmet over his head that he later claimed was used to translate the entity's speech. Zamfreda was then lifted up to a bright, warm room where he was interrogated and examined. The beings told him that they were from the 3rd galaxy and that they'd return soon in greater numbers. After this, Zamfreda somehow escaped or was freed, then resumed his conscious recollection of running across the villa grounds.
Art interviewed some sensational people over the years, some mysterious people, talking about mysterious things that occurred in the deserts. The ET lived in a house on the island and appeared human, according to Chandira. The ET had extraordinary powers. The ET could float rather than walk and could defy gravity. There were a number of test ranges around Area 51 where the government tested exotic technology, ET crafts, lasers, and other things. Hello, my name is Richard Doty. I'm a former intelligence officer with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. From the very early era of the UFO dilemma, mysterious people have surfaced. Some were pioneers of the UFO early days. Names such as Kenneth Arnold, Donald Keyhole, George Adamski, to name just a few. All these people were pioneers starting the interests of UFOs, the mystique of the UFO phenomena. But these people, such as George Adamski, who claimed to have had contact with a person from Venus, he wrote 3 books, talked about his exploits within the UFO phenomena. He created some phenomena himself within his books. Or people like Donald Keyhole, who was one of the key members of Project Blue Book. There's other people that have led and continued the UFO phenomena. A person such as Art Bell. Art Bell, a good friend of mine, had a fantastic radio program. He was involved coast to coast, and then he went on later in his own radio program out of his house at Pahrump, Nevada. Art interviewed some sensational people over the years, some mysterious people, talking about mysterious things that occurred in the deserts, different desert areas of Nevada. And then there's George Norrie, who's the current host, George Knapp. George Knapp is another one that's really has moved the UFO interests through his television contacts and television programming in Nevada. And then there's Whitley Strieber. Whitley has written some books about it and has spoken about it and has really moved on the interests of UFO, and especially the psychological portions of some of the UFO dilemma. The first person I want to talk about is Jamie Shandera. Who is Jamie Shandera? How does he fit into the UFO dilemma? Shandera surfaced first in 1981 as a friend of Bill Moore's. Jamie was in the film industry. Jamie had contact with the Office of Naval Intelligence because he did some photographic work for the Office of Naval Intelligence. He had a contract, a small contract, to do some filming for ONI, abbreviation for Office of Naval Intelligence, in the 1970s. ONI used Shandera on a classified mission once. But Jamie really didn't know what that classified mission was. He was told to do some things, take some photographs, which he did. But during that mission, Shandera claimed to have contact with an extraterrestrial being near Coronado Island, which is in San Diego. The ET lived in a house on the island and appeared human, according to Shandera. The ET had extraordinary powers. The ET could float rather than walk and could defy gravity. Wow, that's really perked the interest of not only the Office of Naval Intelligence, but other people that Jamie had contact with. Shandera utilized some of his contacts within the film industry to obtain cameras, or special cameras, so he could use to spy in this house. When the ONI found out about what he was doing, they ceased all contact with Jamie. But in the meantime, the ONI, with assistance of other federal agencies, actually put their own surveillance on this house in Coronado Island. But when they moved in to search the house, they found the ET had vanished. The ET house was thoroughly searched, but nothing connecting the ET to any known types of extraterrestrial powers were found. Jamie was detained and interrogated, but never charged with an offense. In 1980, Shandera was again detained by the Navy security personnel when he strayed into a U.S. Navy SEAL training area on Coronado Island. According to Shandera, the ET asked Jamie to go there and wait for a craft to land. No craft landed, and he was eventually charged with trespassing onto a military installation by the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. And eventually, the federal government charged him in federal court, or in U.S. magistrate court, with trespassing. ONI went in and asked the U.S. magistrate to dismiss the charges against Jamie. Now, why would they do that? Jamie was secretly working for ONI again, and we found this out when the working group had strayed into that matter and obtained some information about Jamie Shandera. So that's who Jamie Shandera was, and that's how he was connected to the UFO phenomenon. Let's talk about William Moore. William Moore, as most people know, was a co-author of 2 top-selling books. The original Roswell incident. He wrote the book, was co-author of the book, and he also wrote The Philadelphia Experiment, about a ship that allegedly disappeared during training in 1942. Moore was a school teacher and a union organizer who left the classroom and became a full-time UFO investigator. Moore was involved with MUFON and other UFO working groups. Moore was known to U.S. intelligence, specifically me, because he had contacts with Soviet citizens inside the Soviet Union. Now, that's key to us because we had a way or a method to transmit or communicate with people inside the Soviet Union back in the 80s. And we used Moore for that. So Moore was famously known within the intelligence community for being a pretty good spy, a pretty good contact, or an asset that allowed us to communicate through him to people within the Soviet Union. I recruited Bill Moore. I recruited him to be a spy within the UFO community. That's pretty well known now. In 1989, during a convention, Bill Moore told his story, released that information, upset a lot of people within MUFON and the former APRO because he was spying on them. And why did we want somebody, why did U.S. intelligence want somebody within the UFO community? Well, we wanted to know what was going on within the UFO community. Sometimes people reported things to them that they didn't report to the government. And so we kept track of the information that MUFON was collecting regarding UFOs, ET contacts, abductions, and other things. And that's why we utilized Bill Moore. Now, Bill was also involved in the Paul Benowitz case. U.S. intelligence asked Moore to contact Benowitz and seek information on his activities. Now, just to refresh everyone's memories, Paul Benowitz was a scientist who worked outside, had an office outside Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He also lived right outside the base perimeter. And he was photographing strange things that are occurring on the base. We began an investigation. It was my investigation. And Bill Moore assisted us in the investigation. Bill Moore had already had contact with Paul Benowitz because, believe it or not, Paul Benowitz was a member of MUFON. In fact, he was state director of MUFON in New Mexico. So Bill Moore had contacts with Paul Benowitz, and we're friends. Bill Moore provided valuable information regarding Paul Benowitz, his secrets, some of the things that Paul was doing that he didn't let the government know he was doing. He also performed some highly classified operations for U.S. intelligence, which, believe it or not, are still classified today. So Bill Moore was a key person within the intelligence community, and not so much from connections to the UFO community, but within the intelligence community, he did some amazing things to provide information to us that didn't involve anything to do with UFOs or ETs. There's another guy by the name, and probably some of you, or maybe most of you, watching this presentation, probably never heard of. But this person is Joseph Yeager. Yeager was a retired U.S. intelligence agency employee. Yeager had worked for the intelligence community for over 25 years. Yeager was one of the original behind-the-camera persons at the 1988 UFO Cover-Up live show. Now, a lot of you remember that. You can go back and even YouTube it. It's still on the internet. It was a program that was live in Hollywood. They had a lot of people on the show. I was supposed to be on the show hidden behind a camera, but I was not. I wasn't there. It wasn't me. But Joseph Yeager was there, and he was one of the ones behind the cameras. In 2005, Yeager initiated the Serpil email exchange with Victor Martinez. Now, I just unloaded a lot of information to the viewers out there about who actually started the Serpil story. And that was Joseph Yeager. Now, unfortunately, Yeager passed away a few years ago, but Yeager showed documents which were marked classified, which related to the Serpil story. The documents detailed the entire story of Project Crystal Night, or the exchange program involving 12 members of the United States Astronaut Corps on their mysterious journey to the planet Serpil. Whether you want to believe it or not, there's so many different parts of this story, the Serpil story, which, if you listen, we'll discuss in another episode. But Yeager provided details on every aspect of the Serpil story, including airing a film from the 1950s that showed EBA, the extraterrestrial biological entity, that was found alive at the Roswell crash site, and the communications device that Eva got out of the craft. Yeager presented a highly classified briefing to people like Wendell Stevens, Robert Dean, Stan Friedman, Gene Laskowski, Tom Mack, Carl Dale, and even myself. And he would defy anyone that wanted to argue with him about what he knew. Another person that's some people will know the name and probably some won't is Gene Laskowski. He also goes by Gene Lakes. Laskowski was a former U.S. intelligence agency employee for over 30 years, meaning he was a real spy, on the ground, boots on the ground, kicking you know what in foreign countries, collecting intelligence. After his retirement, he worked as chief security at, guess where? Area 51, which is, of course, inside the Nellis Test and Training Range. Laskowski gave a highly controversial presentation at a 1999 UFO convention to a select few about the immediate danger of ET activities on Earth. Presented evidence that ETs are working among us today. Laskowski is about 96 years old and still alive. He's still online. You can still see his emails on a number of different sites. But ironically, Laskowski, he agreed in some of the Serpil story, but he disagreed on all of it. So what's the truth about Serpil and what's fiction? We'll talk about that later. Another highly controversial person within the UFO community, most good insiders, people with good access to the inside, will know the name Paul McGovern. McGovern was the chief of security operations at Area 51 after Laskowski. McGovern had complete knowledge of all UFO and ET activities at the test site, Area 51. McGovern was briefed into research and development operations on both Area 51 and Tonopah Air Force Base. Now remember, Tonopah is just connected next to Area 51. Now Paul McGovern talks a different story about the Serpil mystery. He agrees to some, disagrees with some of the other information. That presents a problem with people within the UFO community trying to understand the Serpil story and trying to connect the dots to determine whether it's a real incident. Did we really send 12 astronauts to the planet Serpil in an ET craft? Or was that just a project that the government created for disinformation? Disinformation against who? The Soviet Union. Remember, now this is back in the 60s. If we were to present information out there that we had contact with extraterrestrials and floated that information to the Soviets, wouldn't you think the Soviets would be scared that the aliens would be giving us advanced technology, advanced crafts, advanced weapon systems that we could eventually use against the Soviet Union? Could be a disinformation campaign. Maybe that's what Serpil was. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Notable mentions within the classification of mystery people within the UFO community. Carl Dale. Carl Dale, retired U.S. Air Force intelligence officer. Now, Carl has a number of stories about what he did as a U.S. intelligence officer within the Air Force. He was an officer. I think he gained the rank of major. He was on some highly classified missions outside the country, investigating UFO activities and crash sites. Robert Collins, retired U.S. Air Force captain. Mark Filburn, retired DIA employee. And Tom Mack. These people contributed to the UFO dilemma in several different ways. Each had their own agenda on the real subject and exactly what that entailed. Now, people like Tom Mack and Mark Filburn, I think some people know Mark. He was on the internet claiming to have worked out of Area 51 on some classified projects for a U.S. contractor. He did. It was verified that Mark worked out there. And he did work for that particular government contractor, EG&G. And he did have access to some really classified information. Tom Mack worked at Area 51. He was involved he was an operations officer, a civilian operations officer, and he managed the test ranges. There were a number of test ranges around Area 51 where the government tested exotic technology, ET crafts, lasers, and other things. And Tom Mack was in charge of managing those operations. So Tom worked out there. We know he worked out there. It was verified that he worked out there. Unfortunately, Tom Mack passed away a few years ago, but his legend remains within the UFO community, within the government. He was highly respected. George Knapp knew him, spoke to him many times. Art Bell had him on his show as a mystery guest, never disclosing his name. I think he was on Art's show 3 different times, where he talked about Area 51 and what was going on inside Area 51. Finally, I have to mention the one person who has kept private from public view all these years. He was a real Falcon. The person that initiated the Avery Working Group, his name was Richard Helms. Helms was the original spy, starting out with the Office of Strategic Services back in World War II. During World War II, he did some extraordinary things for the United States. When the CIA was formed in 1947 after the National Security Act was enacted into law, Helms joined the CIA, worked his way up from an intelligence officer, ground level, to the director of the Central Intelligence Agency from 1966 to 1973. Now, how did Richard Helms become involved with UFOs? He had his own story about a UFO incident that happened in the 1950s at a foreign location. And he became immediately interested in the subject of UFOs, as he has with other aspects of the UFO or the ET phenomena. He passed away in 2002. He told stories about reading classified cables from CIA stations in Europe, where two CIA case officers on a clandestine mission where a UFO appeared and disrupted the operation. After he left the agency, he continued to look in and have contact. And that's one reason he formed the Aviary in 1980. He still wanted to be involved in the program. And he was the motivating factor for all people within the Aviary. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you. Until next time.
If you liked this video and you want to see more amazing content, go ahead and check out the next video on our channel.
I saw the Phoenix Lights UFO.
Did you really?
Yeah.
You were there?
Yeah, I saw
Whoa.
that. Different people saw different things. What I saw was something the size of like an Imperial Star Destroyer from Star Wars that was like at a relatively low altitude moving over Phoenix. My like housemate was like this. I mean, this is before we had phones, right? Before we had cameras. So this is like we had a flip phone if anything. And he was like, dude, you got to get out here. And I like came out the front yard of our house in Tempe, and we just watched this thing move across the sky. It was like, what the fuck, man? Like, I mean, I believe in reincarnation because I came back from DMT thinking that I had a firsthand experience. I believe that there was something inexplicable in the sky over Phoenix that night because I fucking saw it, okay? And it was massive, and it was quiet. And then it was just gone.
So what did it look like?
It looked like a massive craft, not shaped like an Imperial Star Destroyer, but of that scale that was more sort of like tubular shaped. And you could
Tubular?
see, like a tube. But you could see variations in it. It wasn't like totally smooth, and you could see by the way that it was like blocking out the stars, that you could see that there were like apparatus on it of some kind. And I always thought that it was a military aircraft where they thought they had a cloaking device. See, now that's what other people saw was these smaller things on the same night that were explained away as being some sort of military flares or weather balloons or some shit. That's not what I saw. On the same night, but I'm not the only one that saw this larger scale craft. So I always thought, like, man, that could be a military ship. They thought they had some sort of cloaking device that fucked up. It fritzed out, because that's kind of what it looked like. I could see it, and then I couldn't, So
it looked like a tube, and how big were you talking about? Like several football fields?
Yes, yeah.
And how many football fields?
I would say like the size of a battleship. Okay,
Whoa.
Huge. Not an aircraft carrier, but the size of a battleship. Like I would say 3.
What's bigger, aircraft carrier or battleship?
A battleship, I think, is bigger. It's a destroyer. Whatever's smaller than an aircraft carrier. Whatever the ship is that's smaller than an aircraft carrier.
Right. So not as big as an aircraft
Not
carrier.
as big as an aircraft carrier.
What is a battleship? Like,
yeah, it's either a battleship or destroyer, whatever that next one is. I would say 3 football fields at least. It was huge. You could not miss it.
And how high do you think it was above you?
No more than 1,000 feet.
Whoa.
Yeah, no more. It was low altitude. It was like right over Tempe. I'm not the only one that. I'm not the only one that saw this.
No, many people saw it. Yeah.
I actually went on the record with the newspaper I worked for, right away, because they were like immediately dismissing those smaller lights that we just saw as like whatever the explanation was.
Yeah.
And I was like, there was something else, in the sky that night too. So I love to gamble. If I had to make a bet, I would still say it's human military technology that fritzed out.
Wow. But many people said they saw something that looked like a triangle.
No, this was not a triangle. Yeah.
So maybe there was more than one of these things.
Well, totally possible. Yeah.
You remember when the governor did that press conference and came out with a guy in an alien suit and made a mockery of the whole thing?
Which is what their tactic has been,
But then that same governor came back after he left office and talked about it.
Yeah.
And said that he saw something and admitted it. Yeah. What was the governor's name?
Fife Symington.
Fife Symington. See if you can find a video of Fife Symington saying what he actually saw on witnessing the Phoenix Lights. I think later he talked about it.
Well, unlike Fife Symington, I was stoned, but I still know what I saw. Okay. I still know what I saw. And what's interesting is when he's trying to describe the shape, and he puts it at a bigger size than I have it in my memory. I do remember talking with my friend, like it was hard to describe what we just saw. It's like we didn't have a reference. It's just like we're trying to. Let's see if I can articulate this. We're trying to find reference points,
right,
for something that really doesn't have one,
right?
I guess like it kind of estimate the size, but it was unlike anything I'd ever seen before.
Have you ever heard people describe what the Native Americans must have seen when those boats started showing up?
No,
that they had never seen anything that large. That it probably blew them away. You see the Pinta and the Santa Maria and these massive boats from Europe.
Right.
That they were like, "What the fuck is that?"
Well, let's hope that the beings aboard the craft, if that's what they are, have better intentions than the people aboard those boats.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's crazy that you actually saw it.
Yeah.
Wow. And you said it just disappeared?
Yes. It wasn't like whoop or anything. There was no noise. It was there. And there were some lights, like he said. I remember there were some lights that were not stars that were part of this craft.
Could you describe what those lights looked like?
No, they were not colored. They were white or off-white. Because I remember thinking like, are those stars? I was trying to like actually see what is the shape and what is stars. Because that's how I was gauging how big it was. And I was like, no, those are attached to this thing. And then it was just I just couldn't see it anymore. It was like, you know what it was like? It was like the Northern Lights. So I'm from Alaska, right? So it's like the Northern Lights, they're there, and then they're not there. There's just like this ghostly thing, and then they're gone. And it was like that. It was there, it was moving at a slow speed, you know, from my left to right, and then it was just, I couldn't see it anymore. But it was like 20 seconds at least. It wasn't like a glimpse of this thing. It was, yeah.
And how many lights?
Half a dozen, yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I know people said that they saw a triangle. So then for a while they were saying that's why he was probably talking about the the B-2 bomber, the stealth bomber, because they're kind of triangular. It was way bigger than one of those, and it was not that shape at all. You know, I struggle to come up with what shape it was because it's a shape that I haven't really seen before. Yeah. So.
Wow. And what was your initial thought? That that's an alien spacecraft?
No, my initial thought was not an alien spacecraft. It was basically, the initial thought was just like, what the fuck is that? And then once I talked about it, it's that same sort of like want to believe, actually believe thing we talked about several times today. I want to believe it was an alien spacecraft. I believe it was probably, U.S. military technology gone awry.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think they had the capability to do that in the 1990s? Because when was the Phoenix Lights?
Yeah, it was mid 1990s. I think it was 96, might have been 97, not sure. As more time has gone on, though, like you were asking me what I thought in the moment.
Yeah.
As more time has gone on, I've like the needles moved towards maybe that was actually an extraterrestrial craft.
Yeah.
Because there's so much has come out, like especially in the last 5 years, as you've talked about here.
Yeah.
So.
Welcome back to Larry King Live. He's a Harvard psychiatrist, and though he was once skeptical that beings visited from other planets, he now believes differently. And hundreds of people claimed to have been abducted by aliens have gone to him looking for help. His name is Dr. John Mack. He says after putting these people under hypnosis, he's concluded they are not mentally ill, but are in fact everyday people experiencing some type of UFO phenomena. Dr. Mack has compiled their stories in a new hit book, Abduction. There you see its cover, published by Scribner's. Dr. Mack joins us along with one of his patients, Mary Oscarson, a data management specialist who says aliens have been visiting her entire life. How long have you been a patient, Mary, of Dr. Mack's?
I first contacted John in November of 1992.
Why did you think you needed psychiatric help?
I didn't think I needed psychiatric help. I needed someone who really believed that this was happening. I needed someone who was doing active research on the subject matter. I've been having experiences for most of my life, and I had no doubt what was going on. It was simply hard to find someone to talk to about it that had an open mind.
Before we hear your story, what turned you?
I first...
Did you have a closed mind?
When I first heard about Bud Hopkins, this painter in New York who took seriously the stories of people who reported being brought up into spacecraft by alien beings, I thought there must be something wrong with this man and that he must be describing some new form of mental illness. But then when I went to visit him and heard the stories that he was telling me, began to see the people myself, and now have worked with approximately 90 people who have had these experiences, what is extraordinary about it is the consistency of the stories amongst people who are of sound mind, who come forth very reluctantly, as Mary has, who doubt their own stories, who describe what they've gone through with great emotion.
All right, are you saying then, Doctor, that it happened to them, or that they firmly believe it happened to them?
Again, the whole thing has made me re-examine all of these notions of happen, didn't happen. For them, it is completely real, and it is not the product of mental illness. Now, whether it happened altogether in this reality, I don't know, but it shows up in their world. They're seen to be missing by witnesses at the time, so something is occurring that is entering our world.
It's been happening to you a long time. Can you give us a typical happening? What happened to you?
Well, it's never a typical happening.
When was the last one?
The last one was April 11th.
This year?
That's correct.
What happened?
Well, I had a visit from several beings, and there were also several humans present at the time.
Now, these beings came through the door?
Very often, no, they don't come through the door. Very often, with my experiences, they literally materialize in front of my eyes.
You don't see spaceships?
I have been inside of ships. I never get to see them from the outside. I'm always on the inside.
How do you get in?
Usually, I am transported through a window.
And why do they keep coming to you? Do they converse with you? Do they communicate to you?
I think there's more communication now than there used to be.
What are they telling you?
Well, they're telling me a lot of things. One of the things they've told me consistently is that they care, that they're not here treating us as guinea pigs or human experiments, that there is some level of concern on their part for our well-being.
This is said in English by people who look like what?
This is said telepathically. Most of the communication that transpires between myself and them is telepathic.
Isn't that the first trigger a psychiatrist says, mental illness? I'm hearing things telepathically. The radio is talking to me. People are telling me what to do. I'm hearing voices.
You might think so, but in these cases, these people have been examined by myself. They've been tested psychologically. They are of above average intelligence. They are of sound mind. They've been shown as of superior mental functioning by the testers. So there is not indication of any kind of psychiatric condition that can account for this that I've been able to find.
Do you, Mary, telepathically respond back to them?
Yes, I do.
Have you ever asked them the basic, simple question? Why don't you land at the White House?
No, I haven't asked them that. My concern is, why do you come here to see me?
And what do they tell you?
The answer is because we care.
Okay, but I mean, why did you ever ask them why they didn't go see Madame Albright? Or why they didn't go see...
I wish they'd go see everyone. I wish they'd go see everyone.
Why don't they come here now, do you think?
I wish they'd go see everyone, because then more people would have the opportunity to experience what people like myself are.
Why do you think they don't materialize here?
I think that perhaps the society is not ready for this.
But you are, and they're not?
I'm reluctantly ready for it. This has been happening most of my life, and there's no way to get away from it. So for people like me, we're sort of forced to deal with it.
And Mary's story is like a lot of other stories.
It's a very characteristic story.
That the beings appear.
Yeah. In fact, when one abductee hears the story of another abductee, they react with shock because they don't want to believe it's true. They would rather believe it's a dream or a form of mental illness than that this is something real, because it's so shattering to their notion of reality. And that's happened over and over again among the people I've been working with.
Do you travel on the ship?
Yes, I have.
Two?
We're in the ship. We don't go anywhere else that I know of. Usually, when I'm inside of a ship, I have medical procedures performed on me, and I have the surgical scars to prove it afterwards.
Can you show us any?
They're not in a place where I'm willing to show you.
Do they attempt sexuality with you?
No, all of the procedures that I have had done that involve the reproductive organs have been medical procedures. I have been lying on a table, another human has been lying on a table, and eggs have been extracted from my ovaries. That's happened repeatedly throughout my life.
A little scared of this?
Yes, I'm petrified.
What age did it start?
Age 7.
They didn't have ovaries then?
No, at age 7, I think it was a little less traumatic to deal with.
You ever take pictures?
Of them?
Yeah.
No. I have audio tapes, though.
You have audio?
I make audio tapes in my room. Yes, I do.
Okay, I think we're going to show something here. And then you tell us what we're going to see if they put it up to the control room. What is this, a drawing?
Basically, I've been doing some surrealistic drawings just to help myself come to grips with what's happening to me. And I do different paintings of different beings. I use a lot of very bright colors. I try to make them a little bit more palatable to me, and I paste them all over my bedroom wall. It's sort of right. It's sort of my way of acknowledging what's happening to me. I spent the bulk of my life running away from it, the bulk of my life hiding it from everyone, Larry. And I think now's the time to sort of come out about this. And the artwork is my way of expressing something that's been really buried deeply for a long time.
What's that on the side?
The symbols, I have no idea what they are.
They drew them?
No.
Or you drew them, but you don't know why you drew them?
I don't know why I've drawn them, no. But I think they're very important.
What does it all mean, Dr. Mack?
Well, one of the reasons, I don't know what it means. It's some kind of invitation to us to accept another reality. That's one of the things that's going on. What this breeding, what this taking of eggs, taking of sperm from the men, what this creation of these hybrid beings is about, what the aliens will tell us is that it has something to do with evolution, that we're moving to another level of creation.
You are a psychiatrist. You're therefore an MD. Have you examined Mary?
Have I done a physical examination on Mary? No, I haven't. But I've seen...
God, when you want to do
I have looked in the case of many abductees who have marks on their body, or scoop marks, or in the case of one man who had a number of these lesions in a symmetrical arrangement. And the critics will often say, well, they're self-inflicted. This man happens to be a quadriplegic, and he can't do it.
Have you seen implants?
been analyzing the implant that came from the nose of one of the people I've been working with. I thought at one time the implants would give us that smoking gun of proof that our Western mind likes to have so much. But what I find is that the implant, and others have found this too, are not made of some strange, bizarre metals that's going to give us that proof that this is extraterrestrial.
Can your OBGYN help?
Has my doctor helped?
Can he say publicly, well, there are some things that Mary has, nobody has?
I think that he's always been very confused about some of the things that have gone on with me, and for a long time I didn't tell him what was happening. I've had about 6 ovarian cysts, all of which have come after encounters with these beings.
We're going to be joined by the aforementioned Bud Hopkins and a psychologist, Dr. Baker from Lexington, a critic of this. This is Larry King Live. Don't go away.
I think that the focus up until the present time around this phenomenon has been largely upon, is this literally happening in our physical world in a way that scientists could prove through experiment, through replication, and that is, in my view, at this point, a secondary issue. It's an interesting issue. Scientists should work on it. We should continue perhaps to trap the aliens in the course of events. We should try to nail down the implants, whatever. But for me, the power of this phenomenon lies much more in the fact that these experiences are occurring to so many people in this country and throughout the world with such power among people who have no particular reason to be reporting such matters and for which we have no, quote, rational, unquote, which means what we're familiar with, explanation. It is a genuine mystery, and when you read titles like Consciousness Explained, this is an actual book with that title, you should become suspicious. Or when somebody says, well, I really know what this whole abduction thing and UFOs is really about. It's about images that we need to have of the millennium and blah, 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 blah. And you got to be very suspicious about that because, as Bobby says, any kind of theory, any explanation has to take in the whole fabric and richness of the phenomenon. Now, many of you are familiar with my kind of personal history around this, but I will emphasize a couple of aspects of it because I think they're relevant to anything that follows. Because I think, as we've heard, our own perception, our own worldview, our own frame of mind, our own ideology very much shapes what we can see, what we can take in, and how we interpret it. Now, you all know that I was dragged into this by Bud Hopkins, who is here tonight, and so I can say that in all truth, and he knows exactly how I feel. And when I first heard about him and about this phenomenon, I think many of you know, I thought this was absurd. This must be some kind of craziness. And then when I went to meet with Bud, what is going on with the lights here? What? Yeah, there's something weird going on here with the lights. I don't know. It always happens when you talk. There we go. How long is it going to be like that? You know, oh boy, maybe this always happens when you deal with this subject. You know, energy, you get these fluky energy things. I'm not kidding. But I was impressed with Bud's sincerity, and the cases from the beginning seemed to me to be inexplicable. I mean, these people from all over the United States, now all over the world, talking about these stories with appropriate feeling. They hadn't gotten it from the media. The media follows the experiences, not the other way around. They had nothing to gain by this, and as you now know, everything to lose. And it just seemed to me extraordinarily interesting. And when people would ask me after this when I got interested, well, why are you interested in this matter? Why are you doing this? I would say, why are you not interested in this? What could be more interesting than the possibility that we are being visited by some kind of other beings from we know not where who are entering into our lives? Now, what I didn't realize was there are two responses to that. One is it isn't happening anyway. And the other, well, that's the main response, actually, when I think about it. It all boils down to that. Or, if it is happening, I don't want to know about it, you know. So, I've been very naive about how all this would be received, although I think it's more and more becoming more considered in the culture at large. I want to just emphasize the dilemma that one who works in this field faces. Certainly I faced it, I'm sure Bud has faced it, and others. You're confronted with people, you work as a clinician, and that's my work. And this is a kind of litany with me. The years keep going up. It started 40 years as a clinician, now it's 45 years as a clinician. Everything I know from doing that kind of work tells me that what I'm hearing from these individuals, I'm hearing and they are talking in the way that people talk about something that has happened to them. They don't talk about it like people talk about delusions, fantasies, dreams, other kinds of trauma, organic brain, you name it. They talk about it like it happened to them. Now, the problem, as you know, is that according to our worldview, this can't happen. It's not possible. We don't have a place in our worldview for beings, energy, entities coming from the other dimension and crossing over and showing up in our reality. We've spent hundreds of years building up a worldview that says that's not possible. So the culture goes through an ontological shock, or would if it had to acknowledge that, yes, indeed, that crossover is possible and is happening. Now, the dilemma that someone like me, or Bud, I'm sure, has faced this, and others who do this work face, is you have a choice at that point. You either try to force it into the worldview. You sort of search, there was an article in one of our leading newspapers recently where it was said, abduction phenomena explained by scientists, it's sleep paralysis. Well, everybody can heave a sigh of relief. Well, the people are often not asleep and then often not paralyzed and on and on and on. But, anything but is what anything but theory. So you're faced with, you try to force it into some category, it won't go. But a lot of people do that anyway, and then they go away from it. Or you stop and you say, the world may be a different place than the one I thought it was, or the one I was brought up to think it was. There may be intelligences out there that are smart and have. My own direction on this was to, because I just was confronted with case after case after case that was consistent, that I felt there was really for me no choice but to try to change my worldview and to think maybe our notions of reality were incomplete. And that is where all the trouble has come from for me. But maybe if I'd known all the trouble I would get, maybe I wouldn't have done it. So it's probably just as well to be naive in certain ways. Now, I'm going to emphasize some of the elements that this overlaps with what Bobby said, but I'm going to emphasize some aspects of the phenomenon that may not get the attention that they need. Now, I think when Bud and I talk about this, we agree on the fundamental fact that something extraordinary is happening, that we are being visited, that this is going on, that it's real in some profound way. We disagree on some of the details and some of the interpretations, but there's no question in my mind that this phenomenon is real. Now, we can deconstruct the word real, we can say, what do we mean by real? Do we mean experientially real or physically real? And go on and on with the philosophy of it, but it's real, okay? You can decide, we can all decide in how it's real. Bobby talked some about the physical aspect, but I think it needs to be underscored. The physical nature of the experience. This is not just something that occurs in the head or in the feelings. This is a powerful physical experience that involves every cell in the body of these individuals. There are marks on their bodies that are left consistently that Bud and others have discovered. And these marks have a consistent pattern. They may be in symmetrical, roseate kind of lesions, or they may be in triangular shaped, or they may be implants left, which have never been proven to be extraterrestrial, but they're still little
things there that the experiencers believe they can be monitored through. None of those have been proven to have any special qualities, but there's still something has happened there that can't be dismissed. And I could go on about, now I don't present the physical lesions, I don't, because I'm in the medical profession, and the dermatologist would have me for lunch if I did that, because they would say, well, you can't prove that an alien did that, you know, it might have been mosquitoes or self-inflicted or whatever, you know, and what could I say? You know, it's not robust enough to satisfy the general medicine criteria, but it's real nevertheless. Then another thing that needs to be emphasized, which is related to that, are the light and energy phenomena related to this. Now, you see about beams of light, UFOs are surrounded with light, people are taken by this brilliant light, sometimes through a wall, or there's energy in that light. But light is a consistent, powerful light, which has both the physical and spiritual quality as part of this experience. And in association with that light is the experience of some kind of extraordinary energy. And I really don't know how to talk about this, because if you use the word subtle, it's not really so subtle, but it's very powerful, it's very real. And yet it's not necessarily energy like, you know, going through wires or electromagnetic energy or any of the energies that we are really familiar with. So we don't know what this energy is, but it's very real. And people will say, when they relive this, I watch on the couch, their whole body will literally shake from the power of the reliving of what's in their tissues from these experiences. Fantasy doesn't usually work like that. And so that piece of it has to be looked at and considered. Now, that energy also is related to the experience of transformation that we'll be talking about in a bit. They will say, somehow that vibration from them occurs at a higher frequency, and then my body or my mind or myself begins to vibrate at a higher frequency, and that higher frequency is related to the opening to spirit, to source, to the connectedness that in the cosmos. That energy is also connected with information. Notice that Bobby referred to the ecological aspect of this, the sense that there's something going on with the environment. But that energy, information comes in, skills people feel they have gotten, psychic abilities that they feel they've received through that energy. Also, that energy seems to contain great healing powers. Many people who have these experiences go into the healing professions afterwards. They leave their accountant jobs or being computer programmers or whatever they're doing, and they go into the healing professions because they sense that they have some capacity. Not only that we need healing, but they have something through that energy, through their hands, through themselves, that they've gotten through these experiences that gives them healing power. And that needs a lot more study. Now we're getting to I think one of the most controversial aspects of this, which is the hybrid, so-called hybrid program, which Bud and Dave Jacobs particularly recently has written about a lot, and this creation of a species of hybrid beings between the connection of the aliens with the humans, sometimes sexual, sometimes purely vibratory, but a connection. Now, we don't know what the ontological status of those hybrids are, nor do we know the ontological, that is the reality status, the beingness of this. We don't know in what reality is, but particularly it's important in the case of the hybrids because of the interpretive element. In other words, are these beings literally physical hybrids? So if you went up into, if you could somehow crack into a UFO, you'd see little hybrids running around with sort of look somewhat like us and somewhat like them. Or is this in some in-between state of reality, not sort of other dimension, non-corporeal, and not literally material like us, but in some in-between status? I don't know. But it matters, because if you think of it as entirely literally real, that there are all these hybrids, then it can follow, as some have interpreted, that those hybrids, there's so many of them, they're going to take over the earth, and that we're going to be colonized by all these hybrids, or whatever. They're getting prepared for the next So a kind of space takeover. Or another interpretation about the hybrids, and this people get, is that it's to preserve some sort of life, our life, the Earth's life, what's essential of us and essential of them, which can survive the ecological catastrophe. So it's often related to what's happening to the environment. In other words, it's an insurance policy, as one abductee says. So there can be some life after this juggernaut of planetary destruction that that is being wrought on the planet by this one species has created such a situation that life is impossible. I don't know, but the hybrid phenomenon program is definitely in some way very real and very important. Now, the ecological information threat that comes through the eyes, that comes through telepathically, that comes from television-like monitors in the ships, this is, in my experience, a central part of the phenomenon. The experiences are shown that there is a web of life, a fragility of the planet. Now, these are not people that had any particular interest in the environment or ecology. They might be, people that would have been just as happy to go ahead and discard things, create pollution, whatever. I mean, not particularly bad or good, just not specially interested in these environmental matters. But they become acutely aware sometimes of that web of life and of our connection with the planet. They feel viscerally in their bodies that connection with the earth and what we are doing to the earth, and sometimes they will weep in agony over that destructiveness, and if they are supported and are empowered in a sense to speak about this, they can become very effective in talking about that. One of the experiences has become, Susan, who's in the book, has become a leading environmental teacher in the school system in her region of Massachusetts, done many other projects along those lines. At the Ariel School in Zimbabwe, where 60 children saw one or more UFOs landing, and I don't know if any of the children were abducted because we didn't really explore it that deeply with any single individual kid, but many of the kids, when asked what they were learning or what the beings told them, they said that the eyes told them that we're not taking proper care of the planet. That's what they learned through the eyes. And I would ask them, well, did you get taught that in school, or did you think about that? When did you start to think about that? And they say, when I had that experience. Another dimension of this is that people will often change the way they think, the way they see the world, from a literal, linear, logical, factual kind of way of looking at things, which predominates in our culture, to a way that is similar to what the way native people think. The world becomes a world of symbol and interconnection, of archetypes of birth and death. They may actually come up with creation myths of their own. They feel they resonate with native experience. Or the animals, which are often the way the alien beings are disguised, in other cultures they also see that, but they see that in relation to animal spirits and animal powers that are part of that culture's knowledge. And a lot more could be said about that. They often will say they are drawn to native people, and often experiences come to know them. And many native people have come to me because they wanted to help me. They saw what I was doing, and they, sort of like, this guy, this academician, this white guy, he found out this stuff. We got to help him. He's all by himself with this, or more or less, a few of us. And so the number of them have come forward and have been very supportive because as Sequoia Trueblood, who's in my book, when I asked him how many of the shamans that he said he knew, he's spoken with 100 or 150 shamans, know this phenomenon, he said all of them. They've all had these experiences, including himself. Then I want to say a word about the traumatic aspect of this. Bobby touched on this. because it's very important. I don't mean in any way to shortchange the traumatic dimension when I look at the spiritual power of this. It is traumatic for the reasons Bobby said, to have your space invaded, to be taken, to be poked, to have your reality shattered is traumatic. People do suffer from these experiences. But at the same time, when they move through that terror, through that, as they will describe it, as like the dark night of the soul, there is an opening. Something happens that is powerfully transformative and leads to intense growth. When Whitley Strieber went to his Gurdjieff teacher that he'd been meditating with and told about the terror and what he'd gone through with these beings, his teacher said to him, "Oh, you're so lucky." He said, 15 seconds with those beings, 15 years of this kind of meditation. So it's the fast track, if you like, of trauma and transformation, or one of them. And as you've heard, once this opening has occurred, the beings sometimes get to be seen as emissaries from the source, they will speak, or messengers from God or the divine, or whatever we call that primary creative principle in the universe. And when they open to that source and feel that connection, which they often have had hints of all their lives, living here becomes extremely painful. They don't want to be here. Life here is a drag. It's cruel, it's mean, it's harsh. It doesn't have the divinity, it doesn't have the purity, it doesn't have that luminescence to it. Here's one of the people who's here this evening, Will, who described it this way. When you're in the presence of that source connection, there is nothing like it. There is nothing you can conceive of that isn't understood. There is nothing that can't be done. It is a love that cannot be contained, and you know then why I get so angry that I have to be back here. Now, we wrestle with experiences a lot because they are here, and they don't necessarily threaten suicide, but they don't want to be here. And then we get into these discussions, philosophical discussions, can you contribute? But it's a battle because they long to be returned back to that creative principle or source. And finally, there's a dimension which I'm becoming increasingly interested in, which has to do with relationships. And this relates to those huge dark eyes. Those eyes can be terrifying, engulfing. They seem to know everything, sometimes the experiencers will say. But also, after they get past this early period in which they will say they're just looked at like they were specimens and they're just being used for this sort of cold process of taking sperm or taking eggs, sometimes some very, very deep bond forms. Now, this could be interpreted as identification with the aggressor, as occurs in the so-called Stockholm Syndrome, where captives come to love their captors. I don't know, but it seems to have something more than that. Some very deep, intense emotional connection occurs with one or more of these beings, which has a both spiritual and sometimes erotic element, which is extremely intense, and which they will say is many times more powerful than any connection they've experienced on Earth. As if crossing that interdimensional divide that occurs here somehow brings some sort of transcendent power to the creature connection that occurs here. And that often takes place around, that's the being sometimes that they will have had hybrid children with. And there's a whole element to this hybrid thing which has to do with parenting. The hybrids often seem to be frail and weak and not surviving very well. And the aliens seem to have discovered that, well, the human part of these beings at least needs parenting. That's the way we are. And they're very crude and awkward in discovering these things that should be obvious to all of us, which lends us, again, these crude, awkward things often lend a little strange reality to it. One of the experiencers, a scientist herself, very good observer, they tried to give, and again, I don't know if this is literally true, but they tried to give her a bottle, showed her to give a bottle to the baby because she couldn't nurse the baby. So then the rubber didn't have any hole in it. So she said, I can't give it to the baby. So they took a scissor, they cut the thing off, and all the milk just poured all over the place. I mean, again, whether that literally happened or not, I don't know. But for her, it was a very powerful and real and rather touching moment. As you heard on the tape, this experience can be so powerful, these relationships so powerful, that they can be a threat to the marriage. And Whitley, in the book, and others have talked this way, he said, well, my wife and I, we appreciate what we have here on earth, and we split in that other relationship, that's in another dimension, and that's okay. Tolerated better than two relationships in this dimension. But it's, as long as it's in the other dimension, it seems to be, sometimes okay. There's a curious poignancy. The aliens seem fascinated with our physicality, our sensuality, our sexuality. It's as if they long for a body. They want that they miss that. At the same time, this kind of non-egoic existence, this sort of understanding of the interconnected web of all life is something that they teach us. So there's a kind of exchange program of a sort, spiritually, of that nature. Another thing about this, and this is, I haven't done much work with this, but there seems to be something in the way of the effect that these relationships have on human relationships. So there's something that about an expectation or a demand of human relationships that they have a pureness or a kind of honesty or a non-aggressive quality or some kind of connectedness. There's a lack of tolerance that many experiences feel for the sort of cheap shots that we live in everyday interconnection. It has to be different than that. And so something emerges there for relationships on this plane. So I'll conclude with just a few sort of summary observations here, and then we'll hear from Andrea. I see this as a kind of awakening for every man, this phenomenon. But in the terms of our culture, it's a kind of reaching to us from this other dimension, from the beyond. I sometimes kiddingly say it's an outreach program from the cosmos to the consciously impaired. It's now this notion, as I mentioned earlier, of crossover is itself shattering, so that there's a double thing here. The crossover is in itself powerful in the sense that it reaches us with all of what we've been talking about, but the fact of crossover is also shattering of our consciousness. Now, you hear a lot these days about changing paradigms or changing worldviews. I was at two conferences, one in India where a group of us met with the Dalai Lama, and we were looking at what is this new paradigm from the perspective of multiple fields, different fields, and also at the State of the World Forum in San Francisco, the new paradigm was the phrase of the day. Everybody was looking at it, but what does it mean exactly? And I'll just give one angle on that for me. Because I think most of the problems we face on the planet now can relate to the inadequacy of the dominant paradigm, which says something like we are alone in a lifeless universe unless we find radio waves coming here. The planet basically is a marketplace for us. The material world is all there is. There is no tangible spiritual world, although people may have spiritual experiences. And the divinity, the notion of divinity, is a psychological phenomenon, but it's not really about anything. There's a theologian, Houston Smith, that reviewed the schools of religion, divinity schools around the country and what they were teaching. And he noted that they were teaching about comparative religion, about the history of religion in different countries, about what different peoples believed. But Houston Smith remarked at the end of the article, none of these schools ever say this is about anything. In other words, there is no other realm, no divinity that they teach about that exists. It's simply how various people look at it from somewhat of a distance. Now, at this State of the World forum, Richard Tarnas, a philosopher and psychologist, spoke about how Western man in the last several centuries has voided the universe of all other intelligence as an active process in order for the masculine human to achieve its project of gaining dominion over the physical world, what Sequoia says, what the white man has done, the people of the straight line, that's the way we're described, as opposed to the people of the circle who have always lived in, the native people who have lived in this interconnected web. Now, but this voiding of the universe has left human beings with this deep state of grief, that something's missing, something is wrong, something is left out that is of fundamental importance. Now, what I think this phenomenon at its root, and there are many others that are doing this, anomalies, if you will, near-death experiences, other intrusions from the other realm that are opening consciousness. I think what this is all about is a kind of sort of heart opening, a kind of desperate crisis of heart opening, if you will, of a re-ensoulment of the disensouled cosmos, of a reconnection with Source that is occurring among many people. And that out of this, the earth once again becomes sacred. And so this treating of the earth, treating of one another in this destructive, annihilating way becomes impossible because the other becomes sacred. You become identified with it. It is an extension of yourself, and therefore the way we treat the planet just becomes impossible. And then from that, it follows that the primary task that experiencers will talk about, in which I think they communicate to us, is that our primary responsibility at this point is the stewardship of the earth, is the caretaking of this planet, of this home, because this is what someone said in the book, this is the planet of choice. And as Thomas Berry, the radical Catholic theologian, said, as far as we know, as far as we have evidence in the cosmos, this planet is the finest creation of the divine. Thank you very much.
Let's start with you because you say you have actually seen a UFO. Tell me, Carol, what did you see?
Okay, this was 13 years ago, March 2nd, 1975. I was 8 months pregnant. I had my 3 small children, 4, 5, and 8, in a car. I was leaving my parents' home. My husband wasn't with me. He was snowmobiling with friends, which I couldn't do at that time. As I came out of the driveway from my parents' home, I noticed to the west there was a bright star, lower than a star usually is, but we watched it. I drove 12 miles home, and no matter which direction I went, the star was positioned in my driver's window, lower than a star. When I turned straight west to take the last 3 miles home, it seemed to be coming lower. At that point, it was straight in front of me. It no longer was in the driver's window.
Was it still just a bright star, or could
it was still a bright star, but it seemed to be descending. But I thought maybe it was an optical illusion at the time. We went over this little knoll, and the children started screaming that they thought the star was coming down out of the sky. And I almost stopped at the first farmer's driveway, and I thought, no, what am I going to tell him? There's a star coming down out of the sky. I thought I'd just keep going. So I kept going on down the road. Roger's mother lives in a farm home to the left. I almost stopped there again, but I didn't. We could tell that it was getting lower. I passed that driveway. A little ways up the road, there was a road to the right. Then there was a long stretch of nothing, no farm homes, nothing. Just as I passed that road, this ship came down like a shot, just like a shot. All of a sudden, there it was in front of me. It was the level of the windshield. I saw the landing gear. It wasn't like an airplane's landing gear. It was flat.
We have a sketch of what it was.
Yes. There was windows across the entire center of this ship, or whatever it was. It looked like something really out of a comic book, like two cereal bowls together. Of course, I only looked at it for a couple seconds because I was terrified. My 3 children were just screaming. I didn't hear any sound from the ship, but I don't think I would have anyway. They were screaming, and somehow automatically I shifted the car into reverse and threw open my door because it was dark, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to see to back up, headed for Roger's mother's driveway and some help. Then my oldest daughter, who was 8, started screaming that it was coming at us. I glanced back, and it was darting toward us, just small darts. So I laid on my horn while I was driving backwards. Then I asked Mary about it afterwards because I could tell I was getting light and dark all at the same time. She said...
Mary, your child?
She's the daughter, 8. She said it seemed then like it was one huge light bulb, and it kept flashing on and off.
Roger, how'd you get involved?
Well, when Carol got into the driveway at my mother's house, we seen this car drive in, and all at once the door flew open, and in come 3 little kids, and it wasn't long Carol come in, and these children were really frightened. I mean, they're small kids, and their eyes were just bugged out, and they were really scared.
Did you just see the children and Carol, or did you see the ship itself?
No, I seen just the children and Carol. And then at that time, then we finally talked the children into leaving again with their mother. And, well, first before that, I took my 2 children and went out to see if I could see this thing and drove my car up the road a little ways. And I didn't see anything at that point then. Came back, and so then got Carol's children to go with her again, and then she started out again and got about to this same point in the road again, and back she come again. And in the house they come flying again. And these children had never been at this house or anything, but they wasn't staying in the car anymore. They were frightened. And then there was no way they was going to go back out with their mother and go. And so finally we talked to them, and I said if I went with my car ahead of them, would they go with their mother and go?
What happened?
So then we got them to go. I went out ahead of them, and as I drove out the driveway and got to this point in the road again where it came down in front of her, I looked up in the sky and saw this bright light up like a bright star again, like she explained it.
Is it similar to what Carol described? What
Yes,
you saw?
right. Only I didn't see the shape of it, just this bright star part of it.
Doris, tell me what your husband saw.
My husband had 2 sightings. The first one he saw, he was patrolling on the outside, on the outskirts of Elmwood, and he saw this huge object coming towards him. He said he described it as a cigar-shaped thing, but he said had you been looking down from above, it would have looked more like a saucer.
Okay. We have a sketch of that. Why don't we show Doris's husband, the patrolman's sighting. What else, Doris?
Then he said that the thought occurred to him that what it possibly was a big airplane that was going to crash in Elmwood. He jumped out of the police car and dove in the ditch. And it passed over him without any sound of any kind at all. There was no sound connected with it.
Let me interrupt you there, Doris. I want the camera to get a shot of these 3 people right here. Roger, Carol, and Doris. These are sober citizens. They're not on any drugs. Your husband wasn't a drunk or anything, was he? They are not kooks, and yet they tell these incredible stories, all stories of Elmwood, Wisconsin. Larry is the mayor of Elmwood. Tom seeks to build there a landing strip for alien craft. We'll explore this bizarre and extraordinary proposal. We'll talk more to the citizens of Elmwood. First, we take this break. We'll be right back. We are here to discuss the rather extraordinary proposal by many of the good citizens of Elmwood, Wisconsin, to build a landing strip there for unidentified flying objects, spaceships. Doris, in the case of your husband, his contact with the UFO went beyond merely sighting it, though.
Yes, this was the first sighting I described.
The second sighting?
The second sighting was that I should explain first, I suppose, that Elmwood is a little town that's built in a valley. And he was down below, and he looked up on top of one of the hills. It's surrounded by hills. And he saw this bright light, and he thought it was a fire. So he drove to the top of the hill, And when he got up there, I have a scanner in my home, and I heard him exclaim, "My God, it's another UFO." Then I heard nothing more, and of course it frightened me. I got out of bed, went up to the top of the hill. When I got up there, there was one other car there, and he was leaning against the car. He was very dazed, and one of the things we discovered afterwards, they could not start the police car again. They had just had new points and plugs put in it, and they were completely burnt out. I took him in my car down to see our local doctor, Frank Springer, and he went to the hospital. He was there for 2 weeks. They had brain scans. They had everything. There was nothing the matter with him, except our doctor said there's something there that had to frighten him. He could not have bluffed this.
I was just about to make this left turn when I noticed this large ball of flame. Well, it was almost upon me. I had hardly time to think, but it looked like it was coming right straight at me. I'd say it was the size of a football field. It looked like a cigar. It wasn't pointed on the ends. It was rounded on the ends. Then, when it did move, it lurched real sharp, 90-degree angle. When it lurched and took off, I don't think I would have been able to more than snap my fingers once and it was gone. Gone. Couldn't see nothing.
Mr. Mayor, approximately how many of the good people of Elmwood, Wisconsin have come to you and said they have seen UFOs? How many sightings?
I would say, Geraldo, lately we've probably had 25 to 30 people in the past that had expressed this. Now, in the last couple of weeks, we've had many, many more people that have come forward and said, yes, that I had noticed this light in the sky or had seen.
Now, is this mass hysteria, or is this people jumping on the bandwagon, or do you believe this to be a legitimate phenomenon people are reporting to you?
No, it's very, very legitimate. They're good, sound, reputable people, and we have times that there's sightings of 2 or 3 people will have it at one time, and they can identify the same location from different areas.
Why would the UFOs, let's assume for a second that everything that we're hearing is the literal truth, at least as reported by sincere, honest people, what they saw. Why are they picking your little town in Wisconsin?
Not sure, Geraldo, what it would be other than in the past years in talking with different people that have studied these and interviewed people that had sightings over the years. That they seem to wonder if possibly in the Elmwood area there's a large deposits of limestone, and they seem to have found, as they have interviewed these people from around the world, that can sometimes is kind of a common trait that they find limestone. Another thing they talk about is electrical high lines, transformer lines, transmission lines, and in the area that Doris discussed of her husband's sighting, there was a large lime quarry plus an electrical high line that went over the top of the quarry.
Larry, a lot of people are frightened to death of this whole subject. I mean, aside from the fact that they are afraid of being branded nuts, they are also afraid, if it's true, that the darn things will come and visit them. I mean, do we understand that the people of Elmwood would welcome aliens to come on down?
I think what we have is a situation to where the UFO conversation in the Elmwood area is very, very common. In other words, we know that there's the people that are talking about that have witnessed the sightings and this sort of thing are very, very solid people. I think there's you can identify fear in 2 ways. I think one is the fear if I was to observe one.
Adriana Acevedo is the daughter of a prominent attorney. A humble, unassuming teenager, she has led a privileged life. But nothing could have prepared her for an experience she calls a miracle.
What happened was, on June 20th, 1995, in my house around 2 or 3:30 in the morning, I was sleeping. I felt like someone turned on the light.
Adriana says she got out of bed and went to her window. That's when she saw an alien spacecraft sitting in the garden outside her balcony. These photos were taken by Adriana's father to prove it was not a dream.
It was a big metallic object with a little pulsating light.
Adriana says the ship was filled with beings that resembled humans.
I saw small men, white, but their skin was smooth. Some people say they've seen them with eyes like this, but their mouths are very small and their noses are small.
The visitors were friendly and made Adriana feel loved. She claims they chose her for a reason, to send an urgent message that humans are destroying the natural beauty of planet Earth. Adriana says the visitors did not speak with her. They communicated telepathically, sending messages to her brain. She says they have visited her 3 times, urging her to love her family and all of humanity. How do we prepare?
Well, just be good.
Adriana is not the only teenager who claims to have made contact with alien beings. This is the village of Atlamayaya. It's a small, poor village, but it's rich in UFO sightings. One shepherd boy we found here lives with his family in a house with crumbling walls and no roof. His life is very difficult, but he says that the day he encountered aliens changed his life forever.
We were taking care of our goats when suddenly we saw a light.
He says it happened 6 years ago. Claudio Gonzalez was only 9.
We didn't know what it was. We couldn't see anything from the light because the light was hurting us.
Claudio says the alien visitors told him they were here because of the volcano. Legend has it alien spaceships may be using Mount Popo as an energy source or an underground station.
All they asked was, why were so many people coming to see them?
Claudio says the visitors were about 3 feet tall. Other than that, their faces were a blur. But he remembers what they said, like it was yesterday.
They said there's going to be a big war.
Claudio says the aliens gave no date for their prophecy of doom, but they predicted the next world war would take place in New York City. After a moment, the aliens disappeared.
We went looking for them and didn't find anything. They floated away.
That was the only time Claudio says he ever made contact with alien visitors. To this day, Claudio does not know why he was chosen.
I don't know why. I was just there.
But Adriana believes she was chosen because she is quiet and trustworthy. She feels she's been given a mission.
I feel fine, but it's also a huge responsibility because I'm also afraid I may fail.
And so in a small area of Mexico, beneath an alien face naturally carved into a mountainside, 2 children live very different lives. Both say their lives will never be the same.
Before we get started, I have to clear up a little discrepancy here. Apparently the other night, or within the last week, because I've been getting a lot of email about this, and I even received one telephone call. Apparently somebody called the Alex Jones broadcast and asked him why he didn't have me on the air, or asked him something about me. Alex Jones said he had me on the air once before, several years ago, and had to cut me off the air because of the foul language that I used. So on the air tonight, I'm going to tell you, Alex Jones, you are a bold-faced, miserable, stinking little coward liar. Now let me say that again so there's no mistake about it. You can all tell Alex Jones that I said this, and I suspect he's listening because he does. Alex Jones, you are a bold-faced, stinking, rotten little coward liar. I was only on the Alex Jones show one time. It was years ago, when I didn't know who he was, when I didn't realize what a liar and a coward and a sensationalist bullshit artist that he is. He was on one little FM station down in Texas. He wasn't on all the stuff that he's on now. And I agreed to be on his broadcast. That's when I was doing guest appearances on broadcasts, years ago. I was not cut off. I did not use any kind of foul language whatsoever. He treated me very well, and I stayed on for the whole show. Some of you in Texas know that that's true because you heard the broadcast and you taped it. Later, when I found out who Alex Jones was and what he was doing to the truth, and what a cowardly liar and sensationalist he really is, every time he called me after that, I have always refused to appear on his broadcast. absolutely refused to lend him any credibility whatsoever by appearing on his broadcast. And that made him very angry. I've also revealed him for the lying sensationalist bullshit artist that he is by every once in a while bringing to your attention the lies and the deceit and the rumors that he spreads over the airwaves that are not good for any of us, and they're not good for the nation. They are especially not good for militia and patriots. The most disgusting broadcast he ever did was on New Year's Eve, the year 2000, the New Year's Eve, 1999, bringing in the year 2000, in which he went completely out of his mind and claimed that Russia had launched intercontinental ballistic missiles with multiple warheads at the United States of America and actually panicked millions of people who were putting their children and their belongings in their cars and heading for the hills. Now, there's lots of things that can be said about me. Nobody needs to lie about me. Sometimes I am irritating. Sometimes I absolutely will not suffer fools and am just as rude as I can be. Nobody has to lie about me, Alex Jones. So I suggest that the next time somebody calls your broadcast and asks them about me, you tell the truth. There's lots of truth that you can tell about me. But don't ever lie on me, buddy, because I'll chop you off at your ankles. I will chew you up. I will spit you out for the lying, stinking, rotten little coward that you are. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have to say about Mr. Sensationalist, lying, rumor-mongering, bullshit artist, Alex Jones. Good evening. You're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Cooper.
Hi.
Listen, that Alex Jones interview was directly after you published the Veritas June 26, 1998 issue about the Cooper family being targeted by the feds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard it.
Yeah,
And
back in 1990. So did he kick me off the air?
No, he's a liar, and you've pointed it out, and I heard that interview, and you were nothing but cordial.
Yeah. Well, that's the truth.
That's the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia.
Bye-bye.
Alex Jones is a miserable, rotten, little, stinking, cowardly, bull-faced liar. Boy, you know, all of these people ought to know better than to mess with me, because I don't take any crap from anybody. And if I'm not afraid of the whole machinations of the entire government Gestapo, what in the hell makes Alex Jones think that I would ever be afraid of his cowardly little rotten butt? Good evening. You're on the air.
Yeah, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to let you know I verify what you said about that Alex Jones interview. They had it archived on the internet at one time, and I did hear that interview, and there was nothing wrong with what you did.
And I wasn't thrown off the air, was I?
Not a bit.
No. And that's the only interview I ever did with Alex Jones. As soon as I found out what he was doing and who he really was, he's called me back at least 100 times since then, and I've always told him to take a hike. So anyway, thank you.
Facts and common sense are in. Yes, there have been corrupt empires. Yes, they manipulate. Yes, there are secret societies. Yes, there have been oligarchies throughout history. And yes, today in 2002, there is a tyrannical organization calling itself the New World Order, pushing for worldwide government, a cashless society, open borders, total and complete tyranny, where human beings are absolutely worthless. There's 6.25+ billion of us, and the globalists have said it many times. There's too many of us. We're causing a problem. We need to be culled at the tune of 80%. It's amazing to talk about that, but it's the globalists, the UN, their own public statements, and they've convinced a lot of liberals and elitist conservatives and others that by going along with this, that we're intelligent members of society. It's the ultimate Malthus world view. It is this radical, virulent form of social Darwinism. It's the excuse of tyrants. And by creating open borders where there's no national sovereignty and only global bodies that control all the resources, by centralizing and socializing health care, the state becomes God, basically, when it comes to your health. And then by releasing diseases and viruses and plagues upon us, we then basically get shoved into their system.